Okay, this is Sangeetha, so welcome to our webinar. Just to start off, if we can have you guys answer a poll for us, Matt's going to pull up the very first poll just so we can see your background and where you're coming from.
Okay, so our first question is, in what capacity do you engage with youth? So please select one: a parent, a school official, a social worker, or staff support, or other. Okay. So it looks like mostly everybody has voted so far, but as we're looking at it, so it looks like we have 8% are a school official, 67% of y'all are social worker or staff support, and 25% are other. So thank y'all for voting in that poll. Our second question that we have, do you provide college readiness sessions for youth? So your choices are no, yes, but only academic, so SAT, applications, getting them prepped with things like that. And the last option is yes, academic and relational, so the SATs prep and also social skills and conversations around dating abuse. Okay. Looks like we have about 71% of y'all have voted so far, but a majority of you are saying no, that you do not any college readiness sessions for youth. So that's awesome, because then this is the right place for you and how you can help them. But then 10% of you said yes, or 18% actually now, it says yes, academic and relational. So that's awesome. So if you have any feedback or any questions or anything for us, that will be good to go. And then we have one last one for y'all, and this is going to kind of relate back to the webinar itself. So are you looking, do you want more information on, and your options are topics to discuss before college, Title IX coverage, preventing sexual assault, or college-specific resources. So we have conversations, we have discussion in the webinar about all of these topics, and if everyone seems like the most relevant, then they'll be able to focus on those ones a lot. Okay, so it's been about a minute on that question. It looks like 45% of y'all said college-specific resources, so we'll be focusing on that. And then about a tie on topics to discuss before college and preventing sexual assault. So the first, third, and fourth choices will be a majority of what we will focus on today. So here is Nikki, Sangeetha, and Toya.
Okay, so thanks everyone for attending this webinar. It looks like a lot of people want more on college-specific resources. So we're going to go over some of the objectives. The first one is we're going to talk about the value of college readiness sessions, why it's important in terms of prevention, how we as the Family Place B Project define healthy relationships, consent, and sexual assault. And then your students right under the Clery Act and what that looks like at their school, and then also the rights under Title IX. And we're going to get into specific resources and websites that you can use as you're entering college, whether that's your student or child. So. Okay. All right. So since most of you guys are social workers, it's probably pretty apparent to you, or you are already aware of the statistics that we have on the slide here.
as far as between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 women and 1 in 16 men being sexually assaulted while in college. So we just want to make you completely aware that the importance of talking about sexual assault before you enter college is because that these statistics increase during the fall semester, on weekends, at night, and when alcohol is involved. So your students or the students that you work with who are suddenly moving from the comfort of their homes are now just all of a sudden independent. They're in this whole new arena, and we want to make sure that you're completely aware of what your students are getting into, and they should be aware of that too. All right, so your role in your students' lives is really to start the first steps of the prevention initiative, and that's what we work for. And you should be aware that only a fraction of the actual sexual assaults that occur on college campuses are actually reported. So that responsibility to start prevention begins with you and your interpersonal relationships with your students. We all have to take the initiative to teach them to be aware, to talk about things that their parents label as taboo, and to stand up with them when they're afraid. I'm sure that a lot of you guys are aware, but if you're not, depression is the #1 mental health concern for college students. So a stressful event such as a sexual assault or that type of a crisis can be a trigger for depression in college students. So you should be aware of that. That's something that your students are probably going to face when they go into college. So also be aware of your community. Those of your students who are exposed to violence in your homes or in their homes are more likely to normalize the same violence in their own dating relationships.
So one of the things when it comes to working with youth is that we know for freshmen entering college, campus life poses a lot of new risks for them. Growing research shows that there is a high risk time for depression, alcohol abuse, and especially sexual assault. Many youth, it's the first time that they're independent, away from their parents. They're living with people that they don't know with a completely different set of norms. And so this is kind of your time to make sure that they're feeling safe and like they have resources going into college. There's many reasons that the first year of college is a high-risk time for sexual assault. Most of it is because of increased alcohol consumption, expectations about sexual hookups in college, a newfound sense of freedom, and then sometimes predatory behavior, especially of upperclassmen. And so I kind of want to talk about some things that we make sure to do at the B Project when we're working in youth prevention. One of the first things that's really important to do is to make necessary cultural adaptations. So that can be first thinking of some questions to consider. Do these youth have adult influencers around them who've been to college before? Are they first generation in their family to go to college? What types of institutions are they going to? Are they going to junior colleges, community colleges? Kind of thinking through that. Making sure that when you're in the classroom, you're changing examples, changing names to be relevant. That way you're able to connect more with youth. Being flexible, it's important to be willing to meet the students where they are. You might have to kind of change topics and focus on things that are specific to them. Even if you can't get into schools to talk about consent, that might be offering after-school programs, going through Girl Scouts or Girls Inc. That might be working with sports teams. Anything that you can do to make sure that you're at least providing the youth that you work with some sort of conversation about going into college. Creating a safe space for discussion. We always make sure that we offer confidentiality as a group agreement, coming up with guidelines for your discussion. Even if it's only one time that you have in front of the students, making sure that they feel like you're a person that they can talk to, they can ask questions to. We talk a lot about respect and also speaking from your own experience. So what's important to them going into college. And then encouraging their own problem solving. I think as adults, We want to tell students what to do. We want to give them advice. We try to use this motto of giving options and not advice, rather than telling students what they should do, giving them different options and tools. We want students to be empowered to make their own decisions rather than us telling them what to do. So kind of thinking through how to be assertive, using I statements, all those kind of things when they're going into college and facing some of these things.
All right, so I want to go into some of the key aspects that we discussed when it comes to healthy relationships. We refer to it as CREST, and it stands for communication, respect, equality, safety, and trust. So the reason we really emphasize this when we discuss healthy relationships with our students is because it takes all of these factors to set a foundation for a good, healthy relationship, whether it's with a friend or a romantic partner. Also, we like to tie this into college readiness because when you approach healthy relationships with these aspects in mind, it kind of sets an expectation for the relationship for you and for your partner. And that ties into the entire college aspect of setting expectations for yourself as far as your educational career and your professional career are concerned. So we like to tie those in together. When you are discussing college readiness with students, if you aren't already or if you're thinking of doing that in the future, it's a good way to tie in the relationship with what they're going to be experiencing in college as a whole. The next slide has our teen equality wheel. This is a tool that we use with a lot of our students. So you can find this chart if you go on Google and search for teen equality wheel. What we like to do is we provide the students with a blank version that has just the titles in each of the little segments, and we have them fill out their own ideas or their own definitions for each characteristic and use it to guide a discussion. Sometimes it helps if you have them share their own stories or experiences when someone maybe demonstrates those qualities, because that might be easier for them to discuss rather than writing those experiences down into words. And then, of course, at the end of that discussion, we like to provide a completely filled out version, which is what you can see on your PowerPoint in front of you. That has our definition of each of those traits, and we like to really emphasize those so that our students are aware of what a healthy and mutually satisfying relationship actually looks like. So if they are caught in a relationship that doesn't really provide those characteristics, then it raises a red flag for them.
Okay, so one of the things that we make sure we start in terms of talking to high schoolers about college is this idea of boundaries. Because if you can have that discussion, it makes it easier when you get into sexual harassment and sexual assault. We define boundaries as limits that we set with other people. It's important because it keeps us safe and secure. Some examples that we use when we talk to youth is the idea of saying, I love you. That would be an emotional boundary. When you go into college, students might be, it's the first time they've either been able to date or they've had freedom away from their parents, and so they might be tempted to rush into a relationship. And so we kind of talk about, you know, if somebody's partner tells them they love you and you aren't feeling comfortable with that, not to feel bad that you might just not be ready. So making certain that your partner knows what your goals are in that relationship and what your expectations are. Another example when it comes to college is the idea of a time boundary and time apart. As great as it is to want to spend time with your partner, in college you're going to have a lot more obligations probably than high school. And so emphasizing that with students that in healthy relationships, both partners are free to hang out with other friends of different genders or family without having to get permission. And then it's also healthy for them to spend time by themselves doing things that they enjoy and making sure that they're keeping time management as a boundary. In unhealthy relationships, that's when there's power and control and there's that lack of boundaries. And so kind of setting out with students and coming up with a list of things that they're comfortable with and what they're not. And that way, when they get into college, they won't be as overwhelmed with these things because they've already set those expectations. A big thing upon entering college, and also that we talk about with high schoolers as well as elementary and middle, is this idea of sexual harassment. Toya is going to talk about how, when it comes to Title IX, how sexual harassment is handled in schools. Our definition is the one you see on the screen. It's any behavior, verbal, visual or written, text. A big thing now is sexting, so sending inappropriate pictures, physical touch, anything that's unwanted, not liked, and occurs on a regular basis. We discussed with students that there's a difference between flirting with someone and sexual harassment. Flirting is mutual, and when you're speaking with youth, it's important not only to define and give examples of harassment, but to encourage them to speak out when it does happen. They might even encounter situations in which a professional on campus, whether that's a professor or a staff member, is actually the perpetrator of harassment. And they should feel safe to follow proper procedures, because every college is required to have those, and that will be explained later. I think talking to boys especially about this culture of masculinity and fraternities and Greek life can also contribute to sexual harassment in the community. I know as some people are starting to go through Rush and Greek life, that there have been several instances on college campuses with fraternities catcalling girls during Rush, trying to score at parties, having yard signs, and things like that. So speaking to male youth about how that can be harmful and against the school rules on campus, so that way they're also protected as well. We like to talk to students about consent. So when we talk about consent, we think it should start with elementary age students when it comes to a discussion of boundaries. I think as parents and community members, sometimes we unintentionally teach children that their consent doesn't matter. This might be telling children, oh, you have to go give that boy or that girl a hug, even if they don't really want to, or oh, you need to share your toys, or you need to share that even if they don't want to, and not allowing students to feel empowered to say no. So making sure that we're letting them know that they have that right to say no. We define consent as permission without persuasion. So any type of coercion is not consent. It's a free yes. We like to say it's voluntary, it's sober, it's wanted, and we believe that consent is a verbal agreement. So making sure that you're checking in with your partner every step of the way and actively communicating. That video snippet that you see on the screen is a really awesome video that we use in classrooms. It's called Consent and Tea. We recommend using the clean version. If you just go to YouTube, you can type in consent, it's as simple as tea, and they go over different ways that someone cannot give consent. So these could be anything from any type of coercion using drugs or alcohol. We're moving away from teaching our youth that no means no, because it puts the responsibility all on the person who doesn't want the sexual contact, but rather we encourage youth to be active participants in gaining consent. So we say it's your responsibility to check in with your partner and make sure you have consent. So being silent is not giving consent. We also talk about this assumption that when you dress sexy or you flirt or you accept a ride, a drink, whatever, that you're consenting to more, and that's not necessarily true. Saying yes or saying nothing while under the influence of drugs or alcohol, nobody can consent under drugs or alcohol, so we like to talk to our youth about that. Saying yes or giving into something because you feel too pressured or too afraid to say so is not consenting as well. And that idea of dressing sexy or flirting goes into victim blaming. And so we talk about how one person's definition of what's appropriate or flirty might be different from another person. And sexual assault, according to Texas state law, is any type of sexual contact or behavior that occurs without the explicit consent of the recipient. So when we think back to Greek life, these environments can create an atmosphere where violence against women and sexual assault can occur. So making sure that, again, those boys or those men understand that they have to get explicit consent, and also talking about what exactly that means.
All right, so these are some of the red flags that we present to our students so that they can understand if their relationship is tending towards abusive. Of course, we know that abusive relationships don't start off abusive, but these small red flags are things that we like to teach our students to identify so that if they do start to experience them more often or more frequently, then they can begin to use more assertive communication in calling that out and maybe correcting that behavior, or if need be, leaving that relationship. So this is just a quick list that we like to really reiterate with our students. Especially as they enter into college, they're going to be in an entirely different environment. There won't be parental supervision like there probably was during high school. They are going to have full autonomy over their relationships and the environments that they occur in. And to top it all off, there's alcohol involved. So that is something that we like to discuss with our students. So those of you who said that preventing sexual assault was something that you were looking for out of this work, out of this webinar, I hope that this is useful to you.
So in 1990, so a while back, the Disclosure of Campus Security Policy and Campus Crime Statistics Act, or the Clery Act, was created. This is something not a lot of people are aware of. And it's something for you to use before you go to school. Under the Act, institutions must provide survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, with options such as changes in academic and transportation, living, or work situation if there is any sort of infraction against them. So basically, the Clery Act requires that schools explain their policies and procedures and report all crime statistics. So this can be anything from how many murders have happened on campus, arson, burglaries, theft, anything like that, to sexual assault. And if you go online and Google your school, it's really simple. All you have to do is type in crime report statistics, and every school is obligated under this act who receives federal funds to disclose all of the crimes. And usually they're broken down by, you know, what dorm they've been in, where on campus it's happened. The report also has to include who you may report an incident to and what are the possible sanctions that might be imposed on that person. They list available resources, so anything from the fire marshal to the police department. If the campus has a women's center, they have all of those resources listed out for you, and it's published each year. So it's updated every year from the last year, and it's available to staff and students. University websites and handbooks also have all of this information, and the compliance for this is monitored by the Department of Education. So it's really important that students are aware of this. I know not a lot of people are, and so it's something to look into as you start school. So one of the big questions now is we're going to go into how do we stop this violence? I know everybody on the poll said they were really interested in college-specific resources. So how do we handle this? And I'll turn it over to Toya.
Hello, everyone. This is Toya. So, United States federal law, such as Title IX as well as the Clery Act, states that all students have the right and equal opportunities to learn in a safe and respectful school environment. So, with Title IX in particular, Title IX, much like the Clery Act, is another tool that students should be aware of when entering college to ultimately ensure that they have the right to a safe learning environment and making sure that that's protected for them. So Title IX is a law that prohibits any sex-based discrimination in education for any institutions that are federally funded. So schools ultimately are required to not only respond but alleviate any hostile environment. So when I say hostile environment, that can include being excluded from clubs or organizations, dealing with any type of sexual violence in any shape, way, or form. So if the school fails to respond to any student that has allegations of being sexually assaulted or sexually harassed in any way, shape, or form, and they don't respond or they don't try to alleviate that hostile environment for the student, they run the risk of losing funding because they're in violation of Title IX. And every university has a Title IX coordinator who is dedicated to cases like this. So as far as who Title IX applies to, Title IX applies to students of all genders as well as employees of all genders. It protects from all sex-based discrimination regardless of their sex or biological assignment from birth, their sexual orientation, which is who they may be romantically or emotionally attracted to, their gender identity, which is what they internally identify as, or gender expression, which is the gender in which they express socially through their appearance. So schools that are subject to follow Title IX law, public elementary or secondary schools, private or parochial, and other schools that receive federal funding from various programs. Parochial are church-affiliated universities that receive any form of federal funding. If you're unsure whether your school is subject to Title IX, you can contact the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights to get more information on that. So Title IX also protects those in relation to sexual assault. So sexual violence includes sexual harassment or sexual assault. So when a student has been sexually harassed or assaulted by another student, it ultimately creates a hostile environment, therefore interfering with that student's ability to not only learn but participate in educational or extracurricular activities. Title IX not only protects students who are sexually assaulted by a fellow student on campus, but also protects students while on a school-sponsored field trip or trip of some sort, such as maybe a football game, studying abroad, or travel studies. With Title IX, schools obviously have obligations, so Title IX requires the school to take any immediate actions, prevent the reoccurring, and address the issue and its effects for that student. They also have the responsibility to publish a notice of non-discrimination, which can be found in student handbooks or their annual security reports, which can be accessed on their university's website, so you can have students, or you all could sit with a student at a computer and Google the university and look up their student handbook or their annual security report to come up with their notice of non-discrimination. The school is also responsible to adopt and publish grievance procedures that they must follow. So another thing about Title IX, even if law enforcement is investigating a situation for a student, it's still the school's responsibility to also investigate. They need to ensure that their employees are trained in identifying warning signs for students, how to respond and report to harassment, as well as taking the necessary steps to protect the student who was harassed off campus from any retaliation or further harassment from the abuser or the abuser's friend or family member. Schools also obligated to inform the complainant or the person filing the complaint before doing any investigating and getting their consent, to begin any on that part. Title IX, obviously, as I stated previously, prohibits any retaliation from the school, from school officials, from the perpetrator, or the perpetrator's friends or families, as mentioned earlier. However, schools can't always ensure confidentiality for the complainant. If a complainant asks that their identity remain confidential, the school must evaluate that request, and they can kind of weigh the request for confidentiality against the seriousness of the alleged harassment, the age of the complainant, whether there has been other harassment complaints about the same individual that's allegedly abused this person in particular, and the harasser, the alleged harasser's right to receive information about the allegations. So if the information that they're asking is can be found in educational records, the alleged harasser has the right to certain information, which is protected under the Family Rights and Privacy Act, also known as FERPA.
All right, so for your students who are interested in researching their institution, we have some keywords that they can search on their university website. By law, all state-funded universities are required to have data and Title IX contacts available through their website. So the first three bullets are just some information that you can search for if you're looking into that. For most universities or institutions, the report is called the Security or Fire Safety Report. Also, I want to go into, or at least showcase to you, this website that I have the URL for at the bottom, and this is a screenshot of it. This is a really cool website that's provided by the U.S. Department of Education. It allows you to get data for one school over a period of time, or you can actually do a side-by-side comparison of up to 4 different universities and actually download that data if you want to. So it's really cool. We've actually done it with some of our staff members here, and it's very interesting to see. When you do a side-by-side comparison, you can also convert the data into a percentage so that it's more realistic comparison between the different institutions. So that's a very good website to use or to recommend to your students or parents or professionals that you work with. Additionally, we want to provide you with some resources that you can turn to if you're interested in learning more about Title IX, sexual violence, or campus safety in general. These are all great resources that we like to utilize here at the B Project, and we would like to definitely recommend them to you as far as passing them on to your students, your professional contacts, or what have you, or even aiding in your own curriculum. So these are some great options for those of you who are looking for more information on how to prevent sexual violence or relational aggression with your students by creating awareness. All right, so that will conclude our presentation. Can we open the floor for any questions that you may have for us?
A couple of things. I was looking for any questions to pop up on our end. I know some of you may have come in a little bit late, and so something that you can do is you can write in your questions. If you're online, you can write in your questions on the question section of your webinar, or you can type them into the chat box down below. And also, since some of you might have been late coming in, we're also recording our session, and you'll be able to reach that on our YouTube channel a little bit later on. It's youtube.com/user/the Bee Project. You'll be able to check out some of our other videos. We have our other 2 past webinars, one from June, which was trending engaging youth through social media, and then in July was helping transgender youth in schools. So we have a question. Will we have access to the PowerPoint? So like we were saying, we won't exactly have access to the PowerPoint per se, but this video will be loaded up to our YouTube, and you'll be able to rewatch it and go through. And I'll put in the notes section of the video of what parts and at what times those pop up in the YouTube video. You're welcome. Later, you should be receiving an email later today, probably about 2 hours from now, I believe, that will have a Google form that we would ask y'all to fill out. Just have some questions about how you felt the webinar went, any feedback that you may have, or if we were to do a follow-up webinar, what you would want more information on. And so we just ask that you can fill that out, and then we'll get the request saying that this person or that person has filled it out and the responses are available. So we'll give it another 2 or 3 minutes to see if we get any more questions, and we'll answer those if they come up. But then if not, it looks like we will be done a little early today. Okay, so we have a question, and this kind of fits in with what a lot of stuff that we do at Bee Project. We work with high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, all across the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so their question is, this person works with 9th grade high school students, but wants to work with seniors as well before they leave high school and enter college. Nikki, Sangeetha, and Toya, do you have any tips for getting a foot in the door or ideas about which classes would be a good fit for working in prevention around sexual assault, dating violence, or anything like that?
So I think in high school, one of the best classes that fits for me has always been health classes. They cover a lot of these topics, sexual assault and consent. They talk about communication. My suggestion would be if you can get in with the coaches or the health classes, it's really aligned with their curriculum that they already teach. So that would be my suggestion. Also with that, seeing if you can fit in with one of their units. So if they're having, you know, an STD or pregnancy prevention unit, that might be something that you would get into, or their communication units. That'd be my suggestion, is health classes or an elective class. I know sometimes it's difficult getting in schools in the core classes. So if you could try with like the theater program or athletics department, even scheduling presentations through the library, or you know, music classes, anything that's not a core class would probably be the easiest to get into.
There's also a national organization, and I'll shout them out because we've worked with them before. But I believe the program is called Coaching Boys into Men. I believe their website is like cbim.org, or you can just Google Coaching Boys into Men. And they have great tools and resources to work with coaches, whether it's football coaches, baseball coaches, basketball, or whatever. And then that's a way where you're able to work with different high school students as well. Other strategies that we've used, getting into PTAs, talking with different communities. Maybe there's church communities or other religious affiliated communities around that school, or talking with your ninth grade students about, how can we reach other students, trying to find a counselor or a principal to champion you continually working with those ninth graders. So you might not get to work with seniors this year, but in 4 years you'll be able to walk alongside with the ninth grade students and be able to see them off into college, and helping them along is another way that you could work in prevention. Okay, so we'll give it another 2 minutes. We'll take 1 or 2 more questions because we're not getting a whole lot of questions on our end. So we'll take another 2 minutes, and then if that's everything, then y'all will be good to go. And like we said, you'll be getting an email from us in regards to any questions or feedback you may have on our YouTube channel later on. The whole presentation will be uploaded, so you'll be able to check out if you missed anything or if you wanted to go back and hear anything. And that's about it. One last thing, if y'all have any questions at all, this should have popped up in an email. It didn't pop up on my end. If someone wants to clarify if they got an email from me, my email is mjjacobs@familyplace.org. You should have got an email about an hour before the webinar started. So if you're Central, it would have been around 11 o'clock. Or if you're Eastern time or anywhere else, the time will shift. But if you have any questions or anything about us, we're the Family Place and Be Project. We're a nonprofit domestic violence agency. We love working with people. We love being a resource for people. You can visit our website, Family Place Be Project, BEPROJECT.org. You can visit our website and you can see all our resources. If you would like to follow us on social media, we're on Facebook, facebook.com/The Project. We're on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @TheBeProject. Our Instagram is it's just @BProject. And our Snapchat is @BProject. To ask a question to us, the prevention workers, the educators that go out into the field, those are the easiest ways to reach us. Just shooting us a message or a DM saying, hey, we have a question about this. Have you had success with it? Have you had failures with it, or some challenges? And we're always willing to work with different people in the community. So you can always feel free to send us messages there. You can send us email. Once again, my email is mjjacobs@familyplace.org. And I'd be glad to answer any questions y'all may have. Okay, so it looks like there's no more questions coming in. So thank you all once again for being part of our last free webinar as part of our summer webinar series that we're doing. We had a really great time, doing the webinars over the summer, and hopefully this will be something that we will continue on into next year, or any webinars we might have coming up. The best way to find out any information or anything that we're doing is through our social media. Once again, that's facebook.com/TheBeProject. Twitter is @TheBeProject, and Instagram is @BProject. That's where we're doing all of our stuff. Be on the lookout for our prevention months that we have coming up, October being domestic violence prevention, November being our bullying prevention, February being our teen dating violence prevention, and April being our sexual assault prevention month. So be on the lookout for those as we do everything there, and we hope you have a great, wonderful day and a great rest of the summer.
Bye. Oh.